Why on earth do you have 6 kids in this day and age? Are you done having kids? No, I'm not. Well, I don't know. It's whatever the good Lord has planned for me. And I know that answer blows people's minds. It used to blow my mind. I never, ever, ever thought I would be the mom with 6 kids, ever. So how on earth did I get here? What's up? My name is Chrissy Horton. I talk about all things motherhood, pregnancy, postpartum, just real, honest, vulnerable talk. But lately I have been getting the question of, how did you get here? How did you become so open to having children? Has this always been the plan? Is this always something you wanted? And the answer is no. Absolutely not. If you were to have told 23-year-old me that one day I would grow up to have 6 kids, be open to having more, buy 4 acres of land and try to build a mini farm, I'd be like, you were out of your mind. I would have thrown my Cosmopolitan in your face.
So you got a drink thrown in your face. Happens to me all the time.
No, I would never have done that. But I did enjoy going out in my youth. I have never thrown a drink in someone's face. Now, let me preface this and say I've been with my husband since I was 19. So when I say going out, I don't know what that means in some people's mind, but in my mind, it was always just going out with friends, going out with girlfriends. You know, I love to dance, but it would just be with my group of friends. I was never part of, I do not know the politically correct term, so please don't come at me, but I was never been a part of like hookup culture. I have been with my husband since a very young age, and before him, I was in a serious relationship. Now I've always wanted a family, and I was known for that, like in my group of friends. Like, you know, no one was surprised when I was the first to get married. So I've always wanted to be a mom. So it's not as if I was like some crazy partier, and then all of a sudden I became a mom of 6. Like, no, like I've always did want to be a mom. I never thought I would have this many children though. And that's more a byproduct of just the environment I was raised in, the society and the culture I was raised in. I mean, not many people were having big families when I grew up, and that tends to still be the case. I grew up with 1 sister. My husband grew up with 1 sister. So for us to have this many kids is kind of crazy. In fact, my family and I just got together the other night, and we were, you know, sharing stories from our youth and kind of the trouble I stirred up and stuff. And we all just kind of laughed and said, wow, now here she is with 6 kids later. Like, who would have thought she'd be the one with 6 kids? So how did I get here? So my husband and I got married relatively young. I was 23. I just turned 23. Like, I turned 23 just like a few weeks before our wedding. I was ready to marry that man so quick, but he was all like, oh no, you need to finish school first. Whatever. It's probably smart. And then my mom, she was like, can you just live 1 year on your own just to know that you can do it? So my husband wanting to respect my parents, and he thought that was a good idea too. He waited to propose. But I was ready to marry that man from like day one.
Extremely handsome.
Anyway, so I graduated at 21. We got engaged and took about a year to plan the wedding. And because we're Catholic, we had to go through classes and all this stuff. And so by 23, we get married. But I had no desire to have children right away. I really bought into this idea that I was told, you know, through our culture, through society, that you need to live it up before you have kids. And living it up through the cultural lens I was viewing this meant going out, you know, having the good job, making sure your finances are on. There's nothing wrong with planning these things, by the way, but, you know, traveling a lot. And so I really thought like, okay, we can get married young, but we still need to do a lot, because I really got in my head, like, your life is over once you have kids. I really have that in my head. It's like, you know, everything becomes about them, which yes, it does, but we'll get into that in a minute. But I felt like this was a whole, like, you can't do anything for yourself once you have children. So you need to do everything right now. And that's just a lot of pressure to put on yourself in general for anything. Like, I need to get all of this done before this time in my life. I mean, I feel like you'll never feel ready for this other next step if you're constantly feeling like you have to do everything else beforehand. But that's the idea I kind of bought into. And so I was on birth control. I had been on birth control since college, and I was taking just, you know, like a traditional birth control pill. And we did that throughout our marriage. By the time I was 26, I swear the birth control turned on me. Now, before I go on, any talk I am having about birth control, IUDs, all these things, these are just based on my personal experience. I am only speaking for me. And while this may not have happened to you, my personal experiences are just as valid as your personal experiences. So I'm all just saying this from my own experience, and I just really want to emphasize that. So basically around 26, I don't know what happened, but I was not myself in any capacity. I don't want to call it depression because I wasn't clinically diagnosed, but I never sought a diagnosis, but there was something very wrong with me. And I kind of started researching like what's going on. I don't feel like myself all of a sudden. And I kind of stumbled upon some articles talking about how the hormones in your birth control start to affect you differently as the hormones in your body change. You know, I was getting older. I've been on this birth control since I was like 19 years old. So I got off of it. And I immediately felt like myself again. It was crazy how fast it was. And I was very naive. And I thought, well, I've been on this so long. There's no way I'm going to get pregnant so quickly. I got pregnant a month later. We weren't ready to have kids. We thought we had travel plans. We had all these plans. Like my husband had just got into this like startup scene and he was going to San Francisco for work and all these tech stuff. But we were ecstatic. Like we weren't ready, but we were ecstatic. We were so excited. We were over the moon. But we're really worried because Tim just quit his like normal safe job to pursue this whole startup career. Now, this is back in 2013, 2014, okay? Like this whole startup culture and in this tech scene. And it was risky. So, and I was just a preschool teacher, like we're not relying on my income. But nonetheless, we were excited. So I have baby number 1 and it rocks my world. He's the biggest blessing ever, but I was just not prepared in any capacity for postpartum, for the sleep deprivation, for the breastfeeding. And that's why I make so many of these videos today, because I remember just feeling so overwhelmed, so alone, and not knowing anything. So that's what really motivated me to make these videos today, to help new moms. So when all these things happen to them, when they're shaking in the middle of the night and have postpartum sweats, they're like, oh, okay, like I'm not the only one experiencing this. So because motherhood hit me like smack dab in the face the way it did, I was not ready to have baby number 2. But I was also like, I am never going back on birth control. So we did other methods that didn't involve the pill. So I looked into the IUD and I had just too many friends have too many horror stories. And I knew women who got pregnant with the IUD. And that just goes to show any birth control, they'll even say it. It's never 100%. It's never 100%. So to me, I was like, okay, like I don't want to go through what it is to get an IUD and I'm not going back on the pill. So we thought some other methods would work, and I got pregnant. And my first baby was like 7 months old or 8 months old. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to do this? And I remember thinking I could never love another baby as much as I love my first baby. And then he came and I learned just how endless a mother's love is. He opened my eyes into a world of motherhood I never imagined. That second baby just did something that said, wow, like, love does not divide, it multiplies. So we have our second, and we're in over our heads. We got 2 under 2. I'm like, I can't do this. And Tim's doing his startup stuff, and I'm home with the 2 under 2. And it was a lot. And so I said, we need a break. But I will say this, Tim and I always wanted 4. So from the start, we kind of always wanted a big family. We always wanted 4, but we were like 4, that's it. Like that was like our hard cutoff was 4. Before baby number 3, I was like, let's just pause for a little bit. So we did those same other methods to pause between baby number 2 and 3. And I got pregnant. But it did take a little bit longer in between them. So they're our biggest age gap. They are our biggest age gap with a whopping 24 months. And then she came, and then seeing the boys with her, oh, it was just amazing. And so I had 3 and under at that point. And it definitely came with challenges. But I also realized, like, you know what? Like the boys have each other now. And it rocked me, but it was a little easier than 2 under 2 because they had each other and they're a little bit more independent. They're a little bit older. And so it was a little different. But 3 did rock my world because Tim was like knee deep in his business. And it was like, he'd be at work all the time. And we get through it. It makes us stronger, right? It makes us the strong moms we're meant to be. Anyway, so baby number 3, and then I get pregnant with baby number 4. And at this point, it's like, okay, we're done. And Tim was ready to schedule a vasectomy after baby number 4 was born. Now, I got pregnant with baby number 4 during the pandemic. Surprise! Yeah! How many pandemic babies are out there? At the same time, we had already planned on homeschooling. The pandemic kind of really solidified that for us. And so we found a church that had a homeschool ministry close by. And it was through my mom. So my mom encouraged me to go to this new church. And when we rolled up, Sprinter vans, like galore. And despite being raised Catholic, there was maybe like 1 big family in my Catholic church. I did not grow up with a lot of big families. You went to this church, like 8 kids was normal. These families had like 12 kids. And I was just shocked. My mouth was to the ground. I had so many preconceived notions about big families. Like if you can't give them enough attention. Also, and I actually have a whole video addressing that right here on how I talk about how big families can function and why you absolutely can give them enough attention if you're interested. That's a conversation for another day. Or, at the video. You can have that conversation at that video. So I see all these big families and I'm just blown away. I get to know them and they're amazing. These moms are incredible. I'm I am immediately inspired by them. So my mom got pretty involved with this church, and she would host baby blessings for any moms who are pregnant. So it'd be like, okay, we have moms who are pregnant who are due in the month of August. So we're going to hold a baby blessing for them in July, and we're going to pray over them, and we're going to, write prayer cards for the babies. And because this church had a lot of big families, there were lots of moms pregnant every single month. And so I was one of those moms pregnant with baby number 4. And my mom said, you should come to the baby blessing and be part of the group of women who are going, to be prayed over. And so I go to this, and there's like a whole 5 of us pregnant, and there's all these women there, and they're writing out prayer cards, and they're just so sweet. And I just felt so welcomed immediately. And I sit down at a table with a group of women who are around my age, and I go, so when do you guys know when you're done having kids? And they looked at me very kindly and were like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, how do you know when you're done? Like, is 4-year limit, is 3-year limit? And they were like, oh, like it's whatever the good Lord decides. And I was like, excuse me?
Excuse me?
Like, what do you mean whatever the good Lord decides? I was like, honey, I am 33. Like, I could be doing this for like 15 more years. Like, excuse me.
Excuse me?
It was just so crazy because I just met them, but I was able to just like pour my guts and heart out to them, and they just held my hand and talked to me. And I started kind of freaking out. I was like, this is baby number 4. I started having kids at 27, and I'm already on baby number 4. Like I'm kind of freaking out here. How many more kids am I supposed to have? Like, are you telling me this is how I'm supposed to be doing it? Like, and I'm like, I was starting to cry almost. And she was like, no, honey. Like, there's natural family planning. I was telling her, like, I can't go back on birth control. We can't do this. And like, and she's like, well, no, there's natural family planning. And she explains all these different methods, like the creatine method, the Marquette method, and how they're actually very effective. And, it's basically cycle tracking. And let me just, a little sidebar. I have talked to women, in their 20s, and somehow, I talk to a lot of women. I talk to a lot of women with what I do online. And I talk to women in their 20s, and this whole tracking your cycles tends to be the preferred method of birth control, because we're starting to see some of the consequences of being on birth control at a really young age. Now, look, I'm not a doctor, so talk to your doctor about this. But I have seen firsthand the effects of how birth control can be negative to some people on their body and their hormones, right? And so people don't want to take that risk. And so I'm seeing these women opt for natural family planning, and I was really like, whoa. The thing with natural family planning that gets me is like, I wish we were taught this, because when I took a class to learn more about the Marquette method and ways to naturally plan my family, I learned more about my body in that session than I had ever have about my cycle, about anything. I sweetie. I had no idea. So I think knowledge is power, and our bodies are amazing. And there are absolutely ways that you can naturally plan your family. Now, I'm not telling you what to do by any means, but it was just very empowering to learn more about my body and how to cycle track and all these things. So they're introduced to me all these different methods, right? And they said, they're very effective when done correctly. I highly recommend you get a coach, like all these things, right? So I go home from this baby blessing, and I go to Tim and I go, did you know, like, it's against like our religion to like get a vasectomy and all these things? And he's like, what? No way. And he's like, let me look this up. So he starts looking it up. And then I'm just pacing the room all mad. I'm like, who's making up these rules? Where does it say it in the Bible? Like, is it a bunch of priests with no kids making up the rules? Like, of course they can say that. They don't have any kids. They don't even know what it's like. Like, I was on fire. Okay. So he's like, yeah, no, ain't no way. So we are like, let's prove the church wrong. So we're like researching like on why they're wrong and why like I should be able to, do whatever. And again, I'm going to pause. This is my story. This is mine and my husband's story. It's deeply personal. We all have our own journeys with the Lord. We all have our own journeys with our families. We all have different financial circumstances, health circumstances. And I will say this, the church acknowledges that too. The church definitely does acknowledge these things. So it's not as if they're saying, oh, this is how it is for everyone. That's up to you, and if you are deeply Catholic, that's up to you to talk to a priest about and discern with the Lord about. That is not my place to say, okay? So I need to be very clear. The way I'm talking and what I'm talking about is just about me, not about you in any capacity, okay? I don't know your health history. I don't know your finances. I don't know your support. I don't know anything. So please know There is no judgment here. This is a judgment-free zone. I'm just sharing my story in hopes that it helps you in any way. So we dig deep and we're like, we're going to prove the church wrong, like da-da-da. And as we learned more and more and more about why the church teaches it this way, the more we learned about why God designed sex the way he does, the more we learned about why I'm talking about Tim and I again, this is a very personal testimony, should be open to life, the more convicted we became and the more we realized this was the path for us. So we finally reached this conclusion, like, okay, like this is what God wants for us. This is what he wants for us. So I was like, but I'm doing natural family planning because I am tapped out right now at 4. All right. And so, we have baby number 4. We do not schedule the vasectomy. We're doing the Marquette method, which is supposed to be like this really great method, especially postpartum is difficult because you don't have your cycle back. So it's difficult to navigate. So this was supposed to be one of those ones that made it a little easier to navigate. But they did say, even with perfect use, there's like a 5% chance in postpartum that it won't work. And this can happen with birth control too. Birth control, there's a certain percentage where it may not work. So I actually think it was less than 5%. I think it was like 2%. Anyways, so I had perfect use, charting everything, had a coach, and I got pregnant. And that was baby number 4. That was the one that was just with me. Baby number 4 was like 4 months, 5 months old. 5 months old, 6 months old. I don't know. They're very close in age. They're how many months apart are they? I feel like 16 months apart.
Oh, no, thank you.
So when I found out I was pregnant with baby number 5, I started crying, and not in like a happy way. Like, I can't believe this. I'm already in over my head. This is going to be it. Like, I'm going to just keep having baby after baby after baby after baby. And like, I'm not going to be able to handle any of this. And I started spiraling. And so I go and pelt him. He's just so cool as a cucumber. In fact, I have that on video. I'm going to put it in. Let's put it in.
No way. Oh, that's great.
I don't know. And being with him, I knew everything was going to be all right. I was still really nervous, but it is what it is at that point, right? I'm pregnant with baby number 5. Nervous, not know what's going on. But, at some point you accept it. And you're like, okay, this is what it is. And I get really emotional every time I talk about this. Because then he came. And I looked at him and I thought, oh my gosh. If it was up to me, you wouldn't be here. And I just can't even imagine a world without you here now. And it was at that moment I became just like fully convicted in this journey, because, and this would be the same for baby number 6, the one you just saw pop up on the video. Like, if it was up to me, neither of them would be here. I know what you're thinking. So what, are you off to have 12 more kids? And I don't think so. I don't think so. I know a lot more about natural family planning now than I did then. And I know there's ways I can combine these different methods. So anyways, that's my journey. And that's where I am and why we're still open. But we do plan on, using the natural family planning method more diligently and hoping to space out these pregnancies a bit more. And who knows what the Lord has planned for us. He could just be like, nope, like your will of having a family is done. You fulfilled it. Good job. And we may not be blessed with another baby. I don't know. But this has been the strongest thing for my testimony and has brought me closer to the Lord in every way imaginable that I never had before. And it was through this path. And, I have lived a very privileged, cushy life, truly. I mean, I've had my struggles. I have had my struggles, I've had some hard things happen in my life, but for the most part, I had great parents who wanted the best for me. And I think if you just have that, you have so much, right? And this was the first thing in my life where I had to truly be like, I give this to you, Lord. I give this to you. And I know not everyone's religious, so if you're watching is not religious to that, it may not resonate with you, but it's a huge part of my story. And I'd be remiss not to mention it. So it's the first thing I've truly had to give up to him. And so anyways, I make no judgments on how anyone else plans their family, so I hope you can spare the judgment on mine. And until then, I'll talk to you later.